My family left me alone on Christmas to celebrate in France without telling me. When they returned, they demanded $10,000 for my sister's wedding, and called me selfish for refusing. So I packed my bags and walked out. I've never told this story in full to anyone because I still feel like an idiot for staying as long as I did. But looking back, it was the moment I realized I had to cut ties for good. It started 2 years ago, a few weeks before Christmas. I was 27, and still living at home with my parents, not because I wanted to, but because my divorce a year earlier had wiped me out financially. My ex-wife and I didn't have any kids, so there wasn't much of a fight. But the division of everything left me barely scraping by. Moving back in with my parents was supposed to be temporary, a way to save money. Instead, it turned into a constant reminder of why I'd left home in the first place. My parents weren't exactly the warm and fuzzy type. My dad had a way of saying things that felt more like insults wrapped in advice. And my mom, well, let's just say she never missed an opportunity to let me know how much of a disappointment I was compared to my younger sister Rebecca. She was 20, still living at home, but somehow they treated her like royalty. About a week before Christmas, I came home from work to find them packing suitcases in the living room. At first, I thought they were going through old luggage or something. Then my dad casually said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to France tomorrow to spend Christmas with your aunt and cousins." I just stood there, stunned. I didn't even know we had plans with relatives in France, let alone that they were leaving the country. And then my mom said, "If you'd been more like Rebecca and actually listened to us, we might have bought you a ticket." Rebecca was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, acting like it was completely normal. Apparently, they bought tickets for her and me weeks ago, but no one had thought to tell me. They left the next morning, no explanation, no apology, just a reminder that they'd be back in a week and that I should make better choices if I wanted to be included next year. That Christmas was probably the loneliest I'd ever felt. Everyone I knew had plans with their families, and I didn't want to call anyone and explain that my parents had abandoned me to spend the holidays in Europe. I tried to make the best of it. I ordered takeout, put on Christmas movies, and told myself it didn't matter. But it did matter. As I scrolled through social media that night, I saw their posts. My parents and Rebecca were wearing matching sweaters, posing in front of a giant Christmas tree, in some fancy Paris square. There were pictures of them at my aunt's house, laughing over a huge dinner, and my cousins tagged them in stories about how amazing everything was. The kicker? They hadn't posted a single picture with me in years, but they sure looked like the picture-perfect family when I wasn't around. After Christmas, they returned just before New Year's. I had prepared for their return, knowing they would bring up the trip. But I wasn't prepared for how casually cruel they would be about it. As soon as they walked in the door, my dad said, "Man, you really missed it. It was unbelievable, the best Christmas we've ever had." My mom added, "If you'd stop being so stubborn and actually take our advice, maybe you could have been a part of it. We're trying to help you." Rebecca didn't say much, but she grinned when my mom spoke. It was enough to set me off, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing how much it bothered me. A day or two later, it was like they'd forgotten the whole thing. Then, out of nowhere, they sat me down at the kitchen table. My dad leaned over and said, "We need your help with something important." The thing is, this wasn't the first time they'd come to me for money. Living with them, I saw how reckless they were, always spending on unnecessary things while pretending to be struggling. But this time, it wasn't for them. "We need you to help pay for Rebecca's wedding," my mother said. This took me by surprise. As far as I knew, Rebecca wasn't even engaged. "She and Nathan are getting married in March," my dad explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "But he's only 20, and you know he doesn't make much. You need to step up for your sister." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked at Rebecca, expecting her to jump in and explain, but she just sat there quietly, letting our parents do the talking. "Nathan's a great guy," my dad continued, as if I needed convincing. "He's young, sure, but he has potential. They're planning a small wedding, nothing crazy, but it's still going to cost more than they can handle right now. And it's not like you have a family to worry about," my mother added, as if that made it my responsibility. I sat there, trying to take it all in. Nathan was barely out of his teens and working an entry-level job. Rebecca didn't work much either. They wanted me to cover their wedding, because apparently, I had extra money since I was single. "How much are we talking about?" I finally asked. My mom smiled as if I had just agreed to anything. "Oh, not that much, maybe $10,000, just to get her started. We'll all pitch in." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity of it was incredible. "Are you serious? You want me to fork over 10 grand, so Rebecca can marry some guy who can't even afford it himself?" Rebecca finally spoke up. "You don't have to put it like that. Nathan and I love each other, and we'll do this no matter what. But it would be nice if you actually supported me for once." "For once," I said, raising my voice. "You've had their support your whole life. They bend over backwards for you, while I get left out of family trips, and treated like an afterthought." That's when things got ugly. My dad called me selfish, and said I'd always been jealous of Rebecca. My mom chimed in, saying they'd been patient with me, but I hadn't done anything to earn their respect. And Rebecca? She sat there, nodding along like I was really the bad guy for not wanting to blow my savings on her wedding. When I said no, 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 it was like I dropped a bomb. My mom started yelling at me about how ungrateful I was for everything they'd done for me. My dad called me a loser for still living at home. Even Rebecca, who'd been quiet most of the time, snapped and said something about how Nathan would never treat his family the way I treated mine. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I left the house and drove around aimlessly for hours, trying to calm down.